Hey, what's going on, you guys? This is Madam, and I'm coming back to you once again. This time, I'm going to go over to The Guardian, and this is in the history column. It says Ivy League University set to rebury skulls of black people kept for centuries. The article is done by Ed Pilkington. I do apologize in advance for mispronouncing any name. All of the details will be in the description, as I always put them there. It says the University of Pennsylvania is moving ahead with the reburial of cranial remains of at least 13 black Philadelphians whose skulls have been kept for almost 2 centuries in a notorious anthropological collection used to justify white supremacy in the run-up to the U.S. Civil War. The Ivy League University is petitioning the Philadelphia Orphans Court for permission to rebury the skulls in the city's historic African American Eaton Cemetery. Should the cemetery go ahead, it would amount to one of the most significant restorative processes for black remains in America in the wake of the racial reckoning following the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests. The efforts will be closely watched by the museums and collectors across the United States and around the world. This is an important moment. It opens the door to much wider conversation about these collections, said Samuel Redman, author of Bones Room, which traces the often dark history of the curation of human remains. The 13 skulls are currently stored at the Penn Museum, the university's home of archaeological and anthropological artifacts. They form part of a vast collection of skulls acquired by the museum in 1966, known as the Morton Cranial Collection. Okay, and this is the picture of the Penn Museum. It says Samuel George Morton, an anatomy professor at Penn Medical School, amassed 900 skulls, of which came from enslaved people in the 1830s and 1840s. After his death in 1851, skulls continued to be sent to the collection from all around the U.S. and the world, swelling its inventory possibly to as many as 1,700 skulls are currently stored in the physical anthropology section of Penn Museum. Morton used the collection to support his polygenesis, the pseudo-scientific theory that race has separated origins and were of variable intelligence. He divided mankind into 5 races, including black Americans, whom he labeled as Ethiopian race, and whites as or Caucasians. Morton viewed Negroes and mulattoes, as he referred to black people through race stereotypes. The Negroes is joyous, flexible, and indolent, he wrote in the influential 1839 book Cranial Americana, adding that the race represented at its extreme the lowest grade of humanity. The professor meticulously cataloged the skulls, numbering them and labeling them according to the ethnicity. He set out to prove his belief in racial differences by measuring the internal capacity of the cranial, pouring white pepper seed and later iron shots into the cavities. He then calculated the quantity of material needed to fill each skull and converted it into cubic inches, from which he obtained what he presented as an average brain size for each racial group. Caucasians, he concluded, had the largest brains, and Ethiopians had the smallest. Okay. The findings were weaponized by Southern white supremacists as evidence of uh, instinctive intellectual, moral, and physical inferiority of black people, and used to bolster arguments of retaining slavery. Morton's research has since been thoroughly debunked. A succession of modern science, including Harvard paleontologist Stephen J. Gout in 1978, repeated his study and found them to be racially prejudicial in conception, fundamentally flawed in scientific method, and inaccurate in their results. In the past few years, Penn has come under mounting pressure to address the inquiries, iniquities of the past reflected in the Morton collection. In 2017, students at the university launched the Penn and Slavery Project to uncover ties between the university and slavery, leading to calls for return of the collection remains of enslaved people. In July 2020, in the wake of the summer of unrest following the police killing of George Floyd, the Penn Museum removed into storage a number of skulls of enslaved people that originated from a plantation in Cuba and that were still on display in glass cabinets in a classroom. The following year, the museum's newly appointed director, Christopher Woods, formally apologized for the unethical possession of human remains and initiated a process for returning the burial with the help of an advisory group of local community leaders. In a statement, it says it is the first step in what we expect will be an effort towards atonement and repair, Penn Museum spokesman said. Moving forward, by burying the 13 black Philadelphians in the first step, what we expect will be an ongoing effort towards atonement and repair, a spokesman for the museum told The Guardian. Kathleen Brown, a historian who is the leading academic on Penn and Slavery Project, welcomed the move. In a statement, she said, "This is the first, I hope, of many changes, not just for Penn Museum, but for museums all over the world," she says. Several of the world's top museums have large collections of human remains, some inspired by Morton, and faced similar mounting pressure to address the ethical conundrums. In the U.S., they include the Smithsonian in Washington, which has tens of thousands of human remains, the Field Museum in Chicago, the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, and the Hearst Museum of Anthropology at the University of California, Berkeley. In Europe, institutions which will be watching the Penn events intensely, giving their own collections, included the Museum of Men in Paris, the National Anthropology Museum in Berlin, and the British Museum in the Natural History Museum in London. Penn Museum is built on the former grounds of Blackery Amos, I apologize, where poor black and white people, orphans, homeless people, and those with physical mental illnesses were kept in almost like prison conditions. The bodies of the deceased Ems House residents were often trafficked, even for use of anatomy cadavers. Wow, that's crazy. Um, Moving forward, burgeoning medical school, or as cranial for Morton's growing collection. Of the 13 black people whose skulls are set to be reburied, some are likely to have died in the house, Am's house, I apologize, and several are thought to have been enslaved during their lifetimes. The identity of only one of the individuals is known, number 1319 in Morton's collection. Catalog, John Verhees. Morton described Verhees as a mulatto porter who died at age 35 in 1846 in the Amos House, hospital. Before his death, Voorhees is said to have confessed to a murder, which is probably why his name is used in the catalog as a form of naming and shaming. And especially macabre element of this history is that Morton, who practiced as a doctor at the Amherst, would have known personally some of the individuals whose skulls he collected. Morton and his fellow Amherst physicians knew some of these people as patients before making them into specimens, said Paul Wolf Michel, a researcher of the University of Amsterdam who last year published a report on the Morton collection that acted as a major catalyst of the repatriation movement. Mitchell added, these remains are among the most direct treatments to the violent history of medical and scientific racism in Philadelphia in the United States. Should the go-ahead be granted by the Orphans Court, which oversees the remains of those who are identified and or unclaimed, Penn plans to hold an interfaith memorial service at the reburial at Eaton Cemetery. A marker of remembrance will also be placed on the university campus and a community-led public forum held. Some concerns remain among community leaders. Abdul Ali Muhammad, a member of the Community Advisory Board set up under the restoration process, has made a formal complaint to the Orphans Court. They told The Guardian that they objected to the university and the museum being in control of the restored. Let me clear my throat. Restorative process, given that they were the ones that have benefited from the historical desecration of the remains of black and indigenous people. The institute where the harm happened cannot be the same institute that stewards the healing process. Muhammad also questioned the university's excessive intention to rebury at least 13 black Philadelphians. What does that mean? Are there more black Philadelphians in the collection? They need to share the inventory list with the community. The university told The Guardian that given the complexity of the Morton collection, with cranials having some from all parts of the world and some skulls dating back to ancient Egypt times, they were treating the skulls in smaller subgroups, not as a single unit. Following the reburial of 13 remains, the university plans to address the returning of the 53 cranial of enslaved people to Cuba. Excuse me. I'm still battling with my little cold and stuff like that, and so it's a process, y'all. Please be patient. This will take a substantial amount of time as we proceed with the utmost care, respect, and diligence. The spokesman said, if further research yields new information about the individuals in the collection, We remain committed to taking appropriate steps towards restoration uh, of the burial. Excuse me. Towards the repatriation of burial. Uh, uh, only 13. Only 13? Like, I'm with Muhammad. Like, only 13? I mean, and then you wait all this time to do that? Like, I'm just like, to be honest with you, I mean, it's, to me, it seems like a pacifying of it. And, I mean, I'm merely basing my opinion off of the article itself. Um, Everything I say is with a grain of salt. Everything is alleged. So please keep that in mind when I give my opinion. Uh, Feel free to make up your own. But it just seems like to me like, okay, well, all this stuff was going on. We had the unrest with George Floyd and everything, and it's been mounting pressure and stuff like that. I mean, it just seems like something to just pacify the people, as they always do when it comes to black and brown people. Uh, Most notably, other groups of people have benefited, got respirations, people getting called out and canceled for certain groups, um, you know, but yet, I mean, they still drag their feet in terms of, um, black and brown people, of setting the right of atonement, uh, other, like I said again, other groups of people have received reparations, and had their land returned back to them, and some of them have a national holiday, and things like that, whereas though we're still talking about reparations, we're still talking about giving back land, we're still talking about uh, handing property over to uh, their rightful owners or their descendants, um, that owned it and stuff like that. We're still down at the bottom of the pile. That's just how it seems. I'm pretty sure a couple of them have good faith effort, but after all this time, um, this happened in the 1800s. We're now in the 2000s, pushing forward, um, you know, and this is still a topic of conversation. I just don't, I mean, it's not a start for me. It's more so of a, okay, we're going to do this so we can stop getting the letters and the calls and the emails and the petitions it just seems really flat to me. I just think that if museums, um, government, or anything of the above is going to really atone for something, do it in the way that you did it for all those other groups. Don't just, hey, we're going to, give back 13 when it could be like hundreds of thousands or more in the collection, which it is, and we know it to be true. Um, so, I just, nah, it's a no for me. It's a no for me. Like Muhammad said, they definitely benefited, as everyone has benefited from, you know, pseudoscience, incorrect theories that were proven incorrect decades, centuries later, and yet it still holds weight. Black people and brown people are still looked at and viewed as inferior, uh, viewed as, troublemakers, thieves, liars, killers, when we all know the fact is there are a few bad apples in every group. But due to who they are or what their lineage is or what their skin tone is, um, they often get a slap on the wrist. Um, so, yeah, it's going to be a no for me. But I would definitely like to know what you guys would uh, think on this, you know. I'm trying to be respectful as possible. I just don't feel it. It's not. I mean, it's not enough. And like I hear, the old saying, he should be happy. Da 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 da. No, you did not go. Look, listen, listen. When we get the same treatment as all the other groups, as the Holocaust and Pearl Harbor and all of that, when we get that same treatment, then 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 we can talk. Then it'll be a start in the right direction. Until then, I'm still going to say the same thing, respectfully. Um, it is what it is. Um, you can like it or not, but that's just how I feel, you know. Hey, but thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate the support. I appreciate the comments. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a couple of negative comments. So I'm not really too worried about that. But nevertheless, thank you. And with that, you guys, I will talk to you in the next video.